Last time, Takemichi lost his only ex-girlfriend to a biker gang fight. He gains the ability to travel 12 years back in time. As it turns out, this ability works in correlation to a handshake with a little boy. After changing the timeline a few times, he got himself on the brink of death. To get laid, which is totally not weird. Apparently, we got clickbait and cliffhanger at the same time, since Kisaki didn't pull the trigger. The moment he prepares to shoot, Kisaki angrily asks if crying is the only thing he's good for. Disappointed, he bids his farewell, saying that Takemichi is his hero. In that instance, the room goes dark with screams all over. A while later, Takemichi wakes up in an open area with a gun wound on his leg. He recalls that Kisaki shot his leg before killing Chifuyu. With that realization, he turns around his gaze only to find Kazutora peering into the dark. Then, he turns his attention towards Takemichi and starts beating the crap out of him. He reveals that a couple of Toman members were teasing an innocent woman on the street. He asks Takemichi if this is the Toman Mikey wanted to create. This makes Takemichi realize that in this timeline, he's turned into a big shit. Even all the original members of Toman have forsaken their pride and invested in all types of crime. Eventually, Kazutora asks Takemichi for his help. Inside his car, Takemichi tells Kazutora that his memory is still fuzzy from shock. So he pleads with him to take things from the top. That's when Kazutora reveals that Chifuyu was working alone on exposing the truth about Kisaki and his involvement in the murder of Hinata Tachibana. However, in the end, Chifuyu screwed up big time, and so he got himself killed in the process. As it turns out, Chifuyu was working with a detective behind the scenes to back Kisaki into a corner. Instantly, Takemichi realizes that Naoto must be the only one crazy enough to do such a thing. Then, Kazutora drops another nuke, saying that Pa was killed last night. This means that together with Kisaki, Mikey is wiping out all of Toman's original members. As it turns out, in this timeline, the guy is just pure evil. A while later, Kazutora stops his car near an isolated alleyway. There, Takemichi reunites with Naoto. However, much to everyone's surprise, Naoto rigs the entire thing and arrests them both, leaving both Takemichi and Kazutora in shock. At the police station, Takemichi asks him about the whole sting operation. Without any cameras in the room, Naoto came clean. He says that the minute Takemichi returned from the past, the entire timeline changed. Ultimately, he was required to arrest him, since the police had solid proof that Kisaki used Takemichi to order the attack on Hinata. As for proof, Naoto shows him a video that Chifuyu recorded. In that video, Akun begs a loser thug to let him talk to their boss Takemichi one-on-one. Yet, his words fall on deaf ears. Furthermore, his wife who was pregnant with their second child has been missing since last night. At this point, Takemichi falls to the ground in regret and sorrow. With such a heavy burden, Takemichi says that he will now give up. He can't save anyone or accomplish anything in his life. In that instance, Naoto hugs him tightly, saying that he saved his life and many others like Draken, Chifuyu, and Kazutora. Suddenly, the official forces knock on the door, ready to take him in detention. Right before that, Naoto and he shake hands, traveling to the past. Once again, Takemichi wakes up in the past, doing bowling. Surprisingly, he is quite the player. And what's more, he gets in sync with Hakai Shiba. Upon seeing his face, Takemichi remembers that he's the future leader of Black Dragon. Supposedly, he killed the former leader to take over. However, now Hakai is the vice captain of Toman's second division, which is quite messed up. Still, the competition between them doesn't end. They both start bowling non-stop for hours, hitting strike after strike. This forces Hinata and Hakai's elder sister Yuzuha to start gossiping. Hinata notices that each time Hakai bowls, the pins go flying. Yuzuha nods her head, revealing that the secret sauce lies in his heavy balls. Instantaneously, Takemichi notices that Hakai is rocking an 18-pound ball, which is pro level. After a nit and bit competition, Takemichi manages to leave one pin. This allows Hakai to steal the victory. But it doesn't end there. Takemichi gets his arm handed to him in every game possible. Despite the defeat, Hakai says that Takemichi and he are best buds. This makes Takemichi question the future, since this guy was a complete moron. And so, just to confirm, he asks Hakai about his relationship with Takashi. Without any hesitation, Yuzuha takes Hakai's phone from his pocket, revealing that he has Takashi's picture on his lock screen. At this point, everyone including Takemichi is questioning their bromance. At that moment, Hakai comes out of the closet, revealing that he is a twink. Apparently, his admiration and respect for Takashi is on a whole another level, since he was the one who taught Hakai what it's like to be a cool delinquent. This lovey-dovey bromance raises even more questions in Takemichi's mind. He can't comprehend the fact that this guy killed the leader of the Black Dragon in the near future and betrayed Toman. Amidst the thought, Hakai says that his house is around the corner. Unexpectedly, on that street, Takemichi and the others find members of the Black Dragon. Immediately, Hakai tells Takemichi and Hinata to leave the area. However, at that point, Hajime, a future member of the Toman executive table, stops him, revealing that he won't get out alive. In that instance, all the Black Dragon men surround Takemichi, ready to kill the 1st Division captain. Yet, Hakai comes to the rescue. And to add flavor to the story, Hakai reveals that the leader of Black Dragon is their older brother Taiju Shiba. This means that in the future, he murdered his brother in cold blood. He buys time for both Takemichi and Hinata to run away. Despite not wanting to leave Hakai and Yuzuha alone, he realizes that it's the only option. However, while making an escape, Taiju sneaks up on him and lands a deadly blow. Then he finds out the true identity of Takemichi. Afterwards, he orders Hakai to beat him to death. As Hakai's big brother, he orders him to kill Takemichi on the spot. But after just calling Takemichi his brother, Hakai stands there frozen like some girl just talked to him. Even Takemichi is surprised at the whole situation, since moments before Hakai had Demon King-level confidence. Despite being told what to do, Hakai makes an excuse on behalf of Takemichi, saying that he was unaware of their territory. However, all this does is anger Taiju even more. He realizes that Hakai needs to learn a lesson. And so, Taiju goes into Vin Diesel mode, saying that family comes first. Upon seeing the situation, Yuzuha stands up for her little brother, and she only gets smacked in the face. At that time, Takemichi decides to play the crybaby hero and stand up for a girl. This pisses off Taiju, leading him to beat the hell out of Takemichi. Proving that girls have no sense of logic, Hinata steps into the fight telling Taiju to stop. However, he being a Sigma male decides to smack like you want to smack all vegans. Right before the moment he decides to kill Takemichi, the younger brother shows a pair of balls. He tells Taiju that he will quit Toman, only if he lets Takemichi go. Later in the evening, Takemichi regains his consciousness on Hakai's back. There, he apologizes to the 1st Division captain for getting him mixed up in the mess. Yet, Takemichi stays silent, as he realizes that in the future, Hakai is going to kill his own older brother. That night, after waking up, Takemichi finds his old gang in his room. Apparently, they have now joined Toman at the personal request of Takemichi. When he turns around, he finds Chifuyu in the corner. He reveals that Kazutora used to live in the area of Black Dragon. That is the reason the founding members founded Toman. Then, they defeated the 9th generation of Black Dragons. However, now Taiju is the 10th generation leader of the biker gang. The moment his reign began, he completely transformed Black Dragon into an elite murder squad. This means that the current Black Dragon is much more powerful than Toman. Unexpectedly, Takemichi says that dealing with Black Dragon is his problem. And for that matter, he won't ask Toman to get involved. That is when Chifuyu takes him for a ride outside. He reminds him that having fun is the most important factor. Otherwise, Baji would kill him again in the afterlife. For some reason, Takemichi feels like opening up his heart to Chifuyu, since he is the man who sacrificed his own life. With that being the case, he tells him everything regarding time travel in the future. What's even more surprising is that Chifuyu decides to believe him. Apparently, he overheard Takemichi telling Baji to take care of himself before fighting Valhalla. This concluded that he knew something beforehand. In the end, Chifuyu says that he respects Takemichi a lot because he has been fighting all alone. The next day at Toman's captain meeting, Hakai decides to resign from Toman. As a commander, Mikey asks if anyone has an objection. None speak except Takemichi. After making a fool of his already questionable reputation, Takemichi stands down. Fortunately, Takashi comes to the rescue. He tells Hakai that leaving is not an option. Instead, he will personally talk with Taiju regarding his transfer. But what he didn't know was that both Chifuyu and Takemichi would tag along with him. In the end, he has no choice left but to let them come. At Black Dragon's outrageous base, they meet up with Taiju. Instantly, the tensions in the air rise as Taiju says that Takashi has been messing with his kid brother. After denying the accusation, Takashi says that Hakai will leave Toman under one condition, that is if he would release Yuzuha. This is completely opposite of what he had said in the captain meeting. Yet, for some reason Hakai doesn't question it. Then, Takashi asks him to sit beside him. When he does, Takashi says that it's Taiju's fault for driving Hakai and Yuzuha to the brink of despair. This angers the guy, and so he unleashes a deadly punch. However, unlike Takemichi, he knows how to defend. This sight of his impresses and shocks Taiju at the same time. Eventually, at the end, Takashi gives him an ultimatum. Either he makes the exchange and releases Yuzuha, or they go to war. Without wasting a moment, Taiju calls a truce between them, as a result, completing the transaction. While walking back, Takemichi guesses that Hakai killed his older brother in the future to protect his little sister. Later at night, he tells Chifuyu that going back to the future is a good choice. He believes that Takashi saved Yuzuha. This means that Hakai won't have a reason to kill him. However, Chifuyu contradicts his understanding of time travel, saying that he needs to watch a shit ton of movies. He reminds Takemichi that his older self has his arm stuck in jail. This means that he can't possibly shake hands with Naoto. That is the moment when Hakai enters the scene. He tells them to pass a message to Takashi, since he won't be seeing him much. Little by little, the guy gets sentimental, as he remembers that Takashi is the one who showed him the true meaning of love. He also took care of him as a little brother. And now, Hakai builds his confidence, revealing that he will kill Taiju once and for all. The moment he leaves, Takemichi tells Chifuyu that they are going to destroy Black Dragon. On the other hand, Mikey and Takashi make sure that Yuzuha is safe within their turf. Still, he thinks that their truce was way too easy. After that, Mikey decides to skip the captain meeting and ride with Takashi. A while later, they stop at a serene place where Takashi promises never to leave Mikey alone. Meanwhile, at the captain's meeting, Takemichi shares his idea with everyone else. However, Draken declines his request in mere seconds. Afterwards, both Kisaki and Hanma approach them. They want to help them save Hakai from making a big mistake. Initially, Chifuyu gets climax as he threatens to kill Kisaki. However, moments later, they call a truce. Together, the four of them meet an informant Kisaki had planted in Black Dragon. But things go south when Hajime raids the area and catches him red-handed. Yet, unexpectedly for some cash, he betrays Taiju, revealing that he will be all alone at Christmas Eve. After he leaves, Kisaki says that this is their chance to stop Hakai from making a rookie mistake and taking out Taiju. Ultimately, Takemichi asks Kisaki about his real motives behind the whole situation. In that instance, he reveals that this mission will be kept secret from Toman, and so he can't use any 3rd or 6th Division members. Furthermore, he thinks that Baji's death has affected Mikey to an extreme extent. He tries to hide the truth. However, in the end, it's always revealed. This angers Chifuyu into blaming Kisaki for his death. What's surprising is that he doesn't deflect the accusation. Instead, he tells Chifuyu that they don't have the time for chat. They must eliminate Taiju on this Christmas Eve. With that said, he gives them a day to decide. While heading back, Chifuyu clearly voices his opinion, reminding Takemichi that Kisaki is the culprit behind everything that happens in the future. Despite this, Takemichi understands that they can't do squat without Hanma and Kisaki's help. And so, with a heart full of frustration, they decide to follow through. The following morning, Takemichi runs into Hinata and little Naoto, whose Excalibur is still sheathed. They start flirting like in some Bollywood movie, and so Naoto says that he is going home, since their desperate behavior is just a waste of time. This reminds Takemichi about Kisaki. As a result, he thinks out loud, saying that Kisaki would say the same thing. Unexpectedly, Hinata confirms this fact, raising a ton of confusion for both us and Takemichi. Shocked, he asks where the two of them met. As it turns out, Kisaki and Hinata met each other in elementary school. Back then, she used to try rizzing up Kisaki, but the Giga-Chad always prioritized his studies. Then, one day, while returning from school, they saw a couple of bullies troubling a cat. As always, Hinata jumps the gun and tries to talk to the cat, whereas Kisaki, the nerdy version, stays back around the corner, hoping to escape with his life. All hopes seem lost until a young Takemichi with a cheap cape comes in with a flying kick. Yet as people say, some things never change. He gets his ram handed to him by a couple of middle schoolers. But even after that, Takemichi gets up like it was nothing and runs away. From that day onward, she has loved him like crazy. It's true, she's totally crazy to love someone like Takemichi. Then, before parting ways, they decide to meet in the park on Christmas Eve. Afterwards, while walking back, Takemichi recalls that on this Christmas Eve, he broke up with Hinata. However, he thinks that nothing would happen, since Christmas is only 1 week away. Amidst the thought, Hinata's father stops him. He takes him to a nice little restaurant to show his appreciation, since Takemichi convinced Naoto to become a cop. On the other hand, Hinata returns to her house and asks her mother whether she loves their dad or not. With that confirmation, the scene transitions back to Takemichi, who's at the restaurant with a lousy face. A week later, the day of Christmas arrives. Takemichi breaks up with Hinata, since his father said that his gang activities would get her killed. Instantly, she lashes out and beats the shit out of him. After this first-time experience, he meets up with Kisaki and the rest of the team to begin their operation. Whereas on the other side, Hakai prepares himself to kill his older brother at the church. He wants to end things once and for all. Simultaneously, at her house, Yuzuha, while watching a movie, receives a call from a mysterious person. The scene then shifts back towards Chifuyu, who recalls the days he was a complete thug even in Toman. He used to beat the hell out of fellow members just for pissing him off. However, in the end, Baji used to catch him red-handed and beat the crap out of him each time. Then, one day, Baji privately talks with Chifuyu about his condition. He advises him to quit fighting with others, since Toman is different from the other gangs. In that instance, he reveals that his respect for Baji led him to join Toman, and so, that was the moment Baji made him his lieutenant. Back in the present, Chifuyu bows down to the new captain of the 1st Division and presents him with Baji's sash. With his own hands, he puts it on Takemichi's uniform. With that done, Takemichi takes an oath, swearing to always honor Baji's memory and protect Toman. This marks the beginning of the project Saving the Future, even though we don't know what the hell we are doing. Just as planned, Takemichi enters the church to stop Hakai, while the others wait outside to fight and kill Taiju. As expected, Hakai was waiting at the church ready to do the deed in front of Father. At that time, Takemichi activates his Bankai, overly convincing sob story. He tells him about his breakup even though he still loves Hinata a lot. He reminds Hakai that Yuzuha will be sad if he went to jail. In the middle of their conversation, Taiju enters the church without any signs of fight. Instantly, Takemichi realizes that Kisaki and Hanma both played him like a fool. Meanwhile, outside, after a good fight, they manage to tie him up, and then they straight up leave the area. Back in the church, Hakai shouts like he's playing football as he rushes in to strike. Yet, Taiju effortlessly counters the attack. While choking him like daddy, Taiju asks who taught him to scream before an attack. Little does he know that Yuzuha takes his advice and stabs him silently from the back. She reveals that a guy named Kisaki called her, revealing that it's about to go down. This sight makes Takemichi question whether his efforts have changed anything in the future or not. Still, Taiju, who is unaware of the reality, gets pissed off. Eventually, he decides to kill his little sister in cold blood. With no choice left, Takemichi takes a stand for Yuzuha in order to save her life. In that instance, he asks Hakai why he's frozen like a goddamn chicken. However, before he could finish the sentence, Taiju hits with a Mike Tyson original, knocking him the hell out. This makes Yuzuha reach her breaking point, and so she picks up the sword, ready to strike her brother down. At this point, Takemichi realizes that in the original timeline, Yuzuha was the one who actually killed Taiju. All this time, Hakai was just posing as the killer to cover for her. This allowed Kisaki to openly manipulate Hakai from behind the scenes. As Takemichi loses all hopes of saving the future, Takashi arrives. He stops Yuzuha from taking up arms against her big brother. Instead, he goes to the front lines for a one-on-one battle. That is when they formally decide to break the truce between the two biker gangs and go all out. Whereas outside on the snowy roads, Mikey and Draken ride their bikes like horses. Still, Draken is quite pissed off about the whole thing since he feels like his face might fall off. Strangely, amidst the ride, Mikey says that he overheard Takashi's bike somewhere around him. This makes him increase the speed and follow suit. Meanwhile, back in the church, the fight between Takashi and Taiju begins. What's surprising is that Takashi matches Taiju punch by punch. Still, everyone in the back knows that he can't keep this up for much longer. Following this thought, Hakai shouts in desperation, telling him to stop before he gets killed. Suddenly, Chifuyu also enters the church. As it turns out, he had called Takashi in advance, since he knew that Kisaki might pull some funny shit. He then reminds Hakai that his mentor is fighting endlessly, because he knows that his vice captain is watching. Just when things start to turn in Toman's favor, Taiju calls upon his men to finish the job. This is when his lieutenant comes and bangs Takashi's head. Angered, both Chifuyu and Takemichi charge right in without thinking, but luckily, Takashi stops them. Then, they collectively get together to create a strategy. They anonymously agree to fight together with Chifuyu and Takemichi taking the wing and Takashi along with his vice captain Taiju. Unfortunately, Hakai chickens out in the end. This leads to everyone getting beaten close to death. Eventually, Hakai builds up the guts to take the sword and drive it into Taiju. However, before that, Takemichi comes and stops him. He tells him to stand down, since killing Taiju won't change anything. Then, the unthinkable happens, as Takemichi says that he will defeat him all alone. Just as everyone expected, Takemichi gets punched over and over again. Yet, as always, he refuses to give up. Despite all the meaningless crybaby attitude from Hakai, he stays strong and moves forward without any hesitation. While going in for the attack, he recalls how one by one all the members of Toman and his friends started accepting him. Even in the future, Shifuyu and the others have put all of their trust in his ability. Back in the present, Takemichi and Taiju exchange blows simultaneously. This shocks everyone on the scene, since no one has ever landed a punch on him. What's even more surprising is that Taiju falls on his knees, whereas Takemichi, who's a habit of getting his ram handed to him, stands up. Once again, Hakai cries like a 50-year-old feminist trying to make sense. He tells Takemichi to stop. However, he tells him to chill out, as he has been protecting Yuzuha for a long time. Now, it's time for him and the others to protect their friend's sister. That is the moment when Hakai reveals the truth, saying that Yuzuha was the one who always protected him. She even took his share of beatings. Despite promising to protect her, Hakai could never stand against his older brother. This frustrates everyone, but at the end of the day, nothing can be done about the past. Still, Takemichi voices his frustration, saying that Hakai sucks big time. Yet, sometimes he sucks as well. Even Takashi takes a stand, revealing that he has run from his responsibility as a brother too. So, in the end, they are all weak. Right after, Takemichi takes the spotlight, saying that Toman always has each other's back. Still, all things considered, the confession works really well, as Hakai builds up the guts to stand against his brother. He walks up to him and pouches his lights out. But in the end, that only brings forth Taiju's wrath. And so, with only a single hit, he renders Hakai useless. Then, he reveals that all of Black Dragon is on standby outside the church. Instantly, both captains and Shifuyu realize that they are dead meat. Still, they can't help but smile relentlessly in the face of danger. Annoyed by this behavior, Yuzuha asks Takashi and the others why they are smiling. As a kind-hearted person, he tells her that she's an awesome person. This makes her tear up and remember the memories of Mother. Apparently, she died when all of them were little. From that day onward, Yuzuha thought that she was alone in this world. But now, she knows that there are people like Takashi and Takemichi who are worth calling family. In the present, the final showdown amongst the siblings begins. Despite the courage, all of them prove to be insufficient in the face of Taiju's monstrous strength. That's when they hear a distant motorbike coming their way. This raises everyone's morals and gives them the strength to stand back up. Following this, moments later, Mikey enters the church with a smile. After entering the fight, Takashi bows his head, apologizing to Mikey for causing such a commotion. However, Mikey disregards everything he sees. He then makes a bizarre comment, saying that Baji and his older brother always loved the sound of Takashi's impulse. They used to tell him this all the time. And then strangely today, they were the ones who led him to the church. Instantly, both Takashi and Takemichi think that Mikey is losing his shit. This means that Kisaki was right about Mikey losing his nuts. He said that Mikey won't last long in such a state. Back in the present, Mikey says that he only wants to ride with his friends again. He then asks all 3 members of Black Dragon why they are interfering with his matters. Yet, Taiju, without wasting a single moment, punches him down. This comes as a shock to everyone, as Mikey has never been defeated before. Simultaneously, the midnight bells of the church start ringing. Taiju takes it as a celebration of his victory, because now Black Dragon will rule over Toman. But Mikey pops his bubble and gets back up, saying that prayer time is over. That is when Inui tells Mikey to give up. As it turns out, after getting released from juvenile prison, he wanted to rebuild Black Dragon from the ground up. But Hajime told him there was another leader who surpassed him, and so Inui wanted to test his strength. He was the person who never lost in a one-on-one fight. Yet, that day, he couldn't even lay a finger on Taiju. Still, that was not all. Taiju knew how to use violence as a currency. He quickly collected funds to rebuild his former gang to its fullest strength. That was the day Inui and Hajime became the lieutenants of Black Dragon. In the present, Taiju gives Mikey a little credit for taking his full power punch. But what's surprising here is that Mikey says that the punch was his punishment. Then, in a split second, he jumps up and kicks his jaw, defeating Taiju in one go. This sight makes both Inui and Hajime realize the reason people call him the Invincible Mikey. With that done, Mikey reveals that it's Christmas tradition to ride with both Baji and his older brother, and so he always keeps his charm right beside him. A few moments later, Taiju comes back to his senses, telling his men to enter the church. However, upon exiting the church, he finds that Draken has slayed their rams. He comes inside and reports Mikey the situation outside. As all of them rush outside, the exhaustion catches up to Takemichi, causing to faint. That's when Takashi says that he is the real hero of this battle. When Takemichi regains his consciousness, he finds himself facing Hinata. To clear away the confusion, let's take it from the top. As it turns out, after the whole breakup incident, Hinata went home to her father. She knew that he was the one who must have told something to him behind her back, and surprisingly, he comes clean about it. That's when Hinata reveals that Takemichi always comes to her help no matter the situation. She loves him for what's on the inside. After making that bold statement, she rushes to a secluded shrine where she happens to run into Emma. Apparently, her older brother Shinichiro used to come to that shrine, so now it's her family tradition. There, Emma learns about the whole break incident. Right after, she calls Draken and Mikey to look for him. That was the moment Mikey decided to follow Takashi's impulse. He thinks that Takemichi would be with him at the moment. With that said, he agrees to bring Takemichi to Hinata's house. Back in the present, Takemichi acts like a total shithead as he cries like a baby. He begs Hinata to forget about the whole breakup thing. This reminds Draken and Mikey of Shinichiro, since he was totally a lame fighter and way more lamer with girls, yet both of them think that just like Shinichiro, Takemichi comes through for them when the chips are down. As this goes on, Mikey strangely says that he will borrow Takemichi for a ride. The entire scene is observed by Hinata's parents from the balcony. Her mother advises her father to let things be, or else he will lose Hinata for good. Whereas while riding through the wind, Takemichi feels like Mikey is a whole different person when he's all alone, and so he starts having a conversation with him. That's when Mikey reveals that despite being a weak rampunk, his older brother managed to become a leader of a gang. Somehow, he was the light of their life. Instantly, Takemichi links this to Mikey's character. However, he tells him that Shinichiro is much like him. So whenever he falls astray, he wants Takemichi to straighten him out. On the other hand, Draken and Takashi go on a ride. There, he refers to their old name, the Twin Dragons of Toman. As it turns out, Takashi and Draken met on the night he ran away from home. Draken found him graffiti painting a dragon on the wall. After feeding him food, he took him to his house. There, they played poker for a while. Right after, one of the girls there slapped Takashi since he ran away from home. She also reminds him that they hook up with people out of necessity. Years later at school, Takashi confronts Draken with the same dragon tattoo. But in the end, he decides to grow out his hair on Draken's request. Back in the present on New Year's Eve, everyone gathers in the festival. As always, Takemichi gets bullied around for no reason. The gang then spends the night away in celebration. The same night, Mikey initiates the first Toman meeting of the year. There, he calls Hakai to the stage to clarify the situation. Full of regret, Hakai reveals that the entire conflict with Black Dragon began due to his selfish reasons. Most lower-ranked members are confused about the entire thing. However, the captains say that everything is in the past. All that matters to them is that Black Dragon went to shit. After taking back the stage, Mikey calls Inui and Hajime to the stage. As it turns out, he announces that all members of the Black Dragon will be under his command. Naturally, Takemichi is suspicious of them. However, they assure him that his wish is their command. Right after, he announces that Kisaki is out of Toman, since he betrayed Takemichi and Chifuyu in the latest battle. Instantly, he goes nuts about the whole situation. In that moment, he reminds Mikey that growing bigger would naturally create some darkness, and that he is willing to take that darkness upon him. Yet, Mikey makes it clear that darkness has no place in his dream. The following day, Draken fixes up a rundown bike together with Mikey. Then, they call Takemichi to the spot, revealing that Shinichiro brought 2 identical bikes with him from the Philippines. This bike is the twin version of his own bike, and now it belongs to him. While teaching him to ride, Mikey says that it was fate who led his older brother to these bikes. Later in the evening, Takemichi bids his farewell to his great friend as he plans to leap back into the future. But before going, he meets the gang one last time. At the hideout, he tells them Baji's final words, saying that Kisaki is the enemy and that the captain of the 3rd Division will always be Pa. He also narrates that Baji called every founding member of Toman his treasure. After taking a rushed group photo with them, Takemichi jumps back in the future. He suddenly is standing in a funeral, confused to his core. Moments later, he finds out that Takashi has passed away. After seeing Takashi's dead body lying lifeless, Takemichi runs out in sorrow. He learns that none of the things changed even in this timeline. In the end, Hinata still ended up dying, and this time, Takashi too. With the same awful feeling, he goes to his rundown apartment, where he finds the old picture the gang took before coming to the future. That is when Naoto enters the room. He reveals that everything they worked for has gone to shit. Every major member of Toman has been killed off by Mikey. Yet, Takemichi refuses to believe his story. During this argument, they notice that a picture came to him inside an envelope, and it was shipped from the Philippines. A few moments later, he remembers that Mikey and he promised to visit the scrap house where Shinichiro found the 2 bikes. At the sight, Takemichi and Naoto split up. He goes around the place until Mikey finally appears. In that moment, he reveals that he personally killed everyone in Toman. As it turns out, Mikey changed after killing his first victim. After that, he realized that killing anyone would just instantly solve his problem. Now, at the end of his dream, he wants Takemichi to take his life. Upon refusal to pick up the gun, Mikey gets angry and pushes him to the ground. He sticks a gun to his face, telling him that one of them will die. At that point, Mikey looks into Takemichi's eyes and starts crying. Yet he knows that there is no going back. Before they knew it, Naoto arrives on the scene and shoots him. He then realizes that Mikey never intended to shoot, as his gun was on safety. In his final moments, he says that Takemichi has a warm grip. Right after, he draws his final breath with nothing but sorrow and regret. Back in the past, Chifuyu finds Takemichi outside in cold winter beating up a tire with bare hands. That moment, he learns that he came back from the future. Despite the reunion, Takemichi continues punching the bag. It is then when Chifuyu notices that his knuckles are bleeding. He forcefully pushes him down, away from the tire. This makes Takemichi break out in tears, as he still remembers Mikey and his dying body. After telling everything to Chifuyu, Takemichi decides that he won't go back to the future without becoming the commander of Toman. The duo then goes to take a nice hot bath. At that moment, Chifuyu suggests that Mikey had this darkness inside him all along, and Takemichi was the one stopping him. This is when it hits Takemichi. He wonders if Kisaki was the trigger to everything, since he did say that Toman's darkness will be shouldered by him. However, Chifuyu doesn't agree to his analysis. The months later, in summer, Kisaki and Hanma both join the Tenjiku gang to get revenge on Toman. Later that day, Yamagishi and the rest of the squad gets beaten up by members of the Tenjiku gang. On the other hand, Takemichi takes Chifuyu to the train station. Apparently, he plans to lead the delinquent world by defeating all the gangs. This makes Chifuyu call him a little dumb ram, since all Takemichi is going to do in Chinatown is eat food and come back. This causes them to have a little fight and fall out. At that moment, members of the gang approach him with Akun stuck in their arms. Luckily for him, Chifuyu comes along to buy them time. After safely escorting Akun and the others, Takemichi goes back for Chifuyu. But little does he know that members of Toman don't leave their friends behind. Despite the courage, they get beaten up to a pulp. That is when Kisaki arrives on the scene wearing a Tenjiku uniform. Immediately, Takemichi guessed that this would be their greatest fight ever.